Hi, this is Bob Papa, voice of the New York Football Giants, and this is the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast.
Welcome back, Giants fans, to the latest edition of the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast. As always, proudly in association with Andy's Man Club, lads. Remember, it is okay to talk. Tonight, we are 100% British, as you can see, but as always, we are still 100% Giants. And after that shit show at the weekend, Thursday, almost a week ago, we are still 100% Giants, believe it or not. Shane and Kev can't make tonight, so me and Craig have the absolute joy of chatting about that horror show on Thanksgiving as the Giants became the get-right team for the Cowboys as they walked away with a 27-20 win. And on the face of it, it's one-score game, always close. Couldn't be further from the truth. It was so far from a one-score game. It was embarrassing, but how we managed to keep it that close, I do not know. So is it a therapy session? Is it a post-mortem? I think we're beginning to sound like a bit of a broken record, mate, aren't we? How are you doing?
Yeah, first up, apologies for this being horrifically late. Just scheduling issues just got in the way. Day job happens and makes it difficult sometimes, but we wanted to make sure that we didn't miss this one, especially seeing as we missed the previous review for the Cowboys due to personal circumstances. So it's getting frustrating for sure. It's a fine balance, I think, now, because you're kind of getting to that point where you want it to be good, but it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? On one side, that a lot of us want to tank, and a lot of us are looking at that high draft pick, but on the other hand, you can't, you can't want with one hand and take with the other. It's really difficult. You can't say you want to tank and then call them shit and really go off on one. So it's really difficult. It's going to be a horrible few weeks. I can see it getting very toxic, despite the fact that, like I said, majority of people will want to tank. I think the problem is that a lot of people want us to lose, but they want us to lose well, if that makes sense. And at the moment, we're not even displaying the qualities of a functional football team, which is the biggest frustration.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, I'm personally not one that wants to tank. I never will be, just because, I watch the games week in, week out, and I can't will the team to go out there and lose the game, because that's just, we don't play the game to lose. I get those that do want to tank, and I get the reasons why, etc., blah, blah, blah. But the product we're putting on the field at the moment is just, it's piss poor. And I think, it's probably even worse than that, to be fair. So you want to lose well, like losing a game well. How do you lose a game well? You lose a game because you've made mistakes. You lose a game because you haven't necessarily given 100% in everything you do. And, as Mayonnaise said a minute ago, we actually had a lead in the game. We did. We had a lead in the game for the first time since the Seahawks game, which was great, but it didn't last long. And then it then goes downhill from there. And you've got to really want to win. And you've got to really want to put the effort in to win. And at the moment, I don't think we're seeing that effort from any of the players in the team, really. I wouldn't say any one single player stood out in that game on Thursday against the Cowboys. We'll get into it in a minute, but it's just, it's a weird situation to be in. I mean, we're all fed up of losing. We're all fed up of having, losing season after losing season and not being competitive. This is the third year on the bounce. We're going to have a losing record in the season, and it's frustrating. It's third year in the bounce, second year bounce.
Second year in the bounce. Obviously, the first year of Dave's and Shane, we had the playoff, didn't we?
Exactly, and the thing is, like that year has probably made this a lot worse because we've seen what is capable. We've seen what we're capable of 2 years ago. We've seen what the quarterback was capable of, and he's no longer on the team. We've seen, granted, we had Barkley on the team, we had McKinney, we had other pieces in other places, Leonard Williams, but we've seen what this coach is capable of, and yet just the last 2 years have just been god awful. So it's we're at the stage now where all we can do is just hope for the best for the rest of this year. There's 5 tough games coming up. We'll be lucky if we get a single win in the next 5 games. I'm sure that'll please people, But yeah, we'll get into the game short in a minute, like I said. But if you are watching live on X, Twitch, Facebook, whichever platform you're on, get involved in the comments, as there are plenty of people doing already. Send us your questions in as well. Give us your opinions about the game, what you thought we did well, if anything, and what you think, where you think we went wrong, sort of thing. And if you're on YouTube, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, like the episode, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and feel free to leave us a review on your platform of choice as well, whether that be Apple, Spotify, or any of the other podcast platforms that are out there. And we all get into the game.
While you mentioned that, obviously Spotify had their Spotify Wrapped come out, and I know that a lot of people will have podcasts on their Spotify Wrap. So if you do have us in your top 5, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. But also post it out on X and tag us in it, and we'll retweet that and everything, because it's really nice just to see who does have us up there on the Spotify list. I don't know if Apple have done their own thing. Do they show podcasts as well?
Apple Music have done their own thing, I know, but I don't know if Apple Podcasts have. I'll have a look later. If anyone knows that if Apple Podcasts have done their own thing, let us know in the comments. Get involved. Excuse me. But if we are in your top 5, thank you. Appreciate it. 4 of us here in the UK being in a top 5 podcast with people. What more could we want? A winning football team? Is that too much to ask for? Maybe a little bit at the moment. Let's talk about the game. I suppose we have to. So Thanksgiving Day, the 4th most watched Thanksgiving game ever on national television in America. 38.5 million people tuned in to watch it, and it wasn't the best viewing for those 38.5 million people. I mean, granted, obviously they may not have watched the whole game, but they watched at least some of it. It wasn't the prettiest of games. It was summed up by the horrific final 3.5 minutes just before the half. Both teams possessed the ball twice, and somehow in that time ran 21 plays for a combined total of 41 yards, and 5 penalties were called on the field as well. So a great end to the first half there. And a handful of players described their play against the Buccaneers as soft. There was a noted improvement, despite the continued showing of missed tackles and drops. But this time we found another way to beat ourselves. We always seem to do that. We always improve in one area and then get shitter in another. And this week, it was penalties. 13 penalties across the game that were accepted, 14 in total. The defense had 6. Whereas the offense had 7 and special teams had 1. So special teams aren't out of this week. And in total, 98 yards lost in total penalties, which obviously is the length of a field. So, we're just giving Dallas a whole field's worth of possession, and it just... The penalties came on frustrating plays as well. And it was almost like... Because... we could have quite easily gone into Dallas and beat them on Thursday. I think if we'd have played clean football, disciplined football, I think we could have potentially come out there with a win. How we would have won that game, I don't know, but we could have come out of there with a win, because let's face it, the Dallas Cowboys are shit this year. Yeah, we're no better. We are worse. We have a 2-10 record for a reason. But the Dallas Cowboys are a shell of their former selves, and I think we just, like I said, it is their get right game. They've won 2 in a row now. They beat Washington last week. They beat the Giants this week. Hell, they could go on a roll and win out the rest of the season and finish at 10-7 and be in the playoff mix. It wouldn't surprise me, but it's just one of those games again. against the Dallas Cowboys, where we just can't seem to beat them. We're a 7-game losing streak now this season, which is tied for the 7th longest in franchise history. And to top it all, we were the first team officially eliminated from playoff contention this year. What a fantastic way to celebrate 100 seasons of the New York Football Giants. Couldn't think of a better way to celebrate the fact that this team's been around for 100 years than to be the first team officially eliminated from playoff contention. There we go. And it wasn't just poor play. It wasn't just losing the game. There were some pretty key injuries to come out of the game as well. That sort of injury curse has cast its hand again. And, there's positions on that field we are looking very thin at now. On Thursday, obviously during the game, we saw Cordell Flott get injured, DJ Davidson, Nacho, and most importantly, and I think it's going to have a massive impact for the rest of the season, Dexter Lawrence. And it came out after the game that it was a dislocated elbow, and he's now done for the season. And so is Theo Johnson as well with a foot injury. So fan-fucking-tastic. Yeah, exactly. Dexter's done for the year. It's worse than losing mayonnaise. I fully agree with you that. And Drew Lock took a few hits as well. Neighbours got up slowly during the game, but there was luckily no lasting damage. And like I said, Theo Johnson suffered that foot injury, which he's been put onto IR, but the likelihood of him coming back for the rest of the year is pointless because he's on IR for 4 weeks minimum. He's only going to come back for 1 game, so you might as well just scrap him off for the rest of the year and let him rest up and recuperate and go into the off-season. And due to both Nacho and DJ Davidson being banged up, the team has signed Corey Durden off the Rams practice squad this week. The former NC State player was an undrafted free agent in 2023. Originally signed with the Lions, but before being cut and then signed with the Rams. He's appeared in 4 games, recording 3 tackles and 1 solo. So a little bit of insurance there on the D-line. It's not looking pretty. I'll talk defense shortly, but it's not looking pretty on that defensive line for the rest of this year. Before I do talk about defense, though, we've got to talk about the other side of the ball because there's been a lot going on offense. Anything good, though?
No, not really. It's tough, isn't it? Like I said last week and have done for the last few weeks. The whole point of looking at the offense was always to try and have an overarching point, but it's very difficult when we're just going through the motions. Essentially, we did have a big thing happen though on Thursday. We had our first Drew Lock start of the season. So, we look at Locke and then you look at Tommy DeVito. They're both battling it out for who's going to start for the rest of the season. They announced today that Drew Lock would be starting on Sunday against the Saints, but we'll save that for tomorrow's episode. But DeVito was ruled out with a forearm injury. Drew Lock was called up very late. The injury that DeVito picked up was on a nothing play at the end of the Bucks game. So, how did Locke fare is the kind of angle that I thought I'd have a look at, and has he claimed that number 1 spot for himself? And in a word, no, he hadn't. It's not like if there was a proper competition this week that he would be the standout. That there was no real difference between having him under center in the same way that we had Tommy DeVito under center. Against the Bucks, DeVito was 21 of 31 for 189 yards. Against the Cowboys, Locke was 21 of 32 for 178 yards. So very, very similar. 7 rushes for 32 for DeVito against the Bucks. 4 rushes for 57 for Locke against the Cowboys. 0 passing touchdowns for either of them. 1 rushing touchdown for Locke against the Cowboys. He did have an interception, which was obviously a pick 6, and he had a fumble, whereas DeVito, no interceptions, no fumbles. But the interesting thing is when you actually look at the pressure side of things, DeVito was pressured on 49% of his dropbacks against the Bucks, hit 8 times, 5 of them being sacks. Locke was also under the cosh, 52% of his dropbacks he was pressured on, 12 times he was hit, 6 of them being sacked. So I think Locke suffered a lot more, and you'd imagine so with the Cowboys. Obviously, Michael Parsons is probably a much better pass rusher than anyone that the Bucks have got, and I think that even the Cowboys interior is probably just as good as Vita Vea. So that's understandable. The other problem is both quarterbacks had to deal with backup tackles on both sides, which is another reason that you're going to have pressure if they're there with Thomas and Illuminor. I think it's a little different, but I think the general consensus that we can gain from this is that a few weeks ago when we were having the conversations of DeVito starting over Locke, is that because the team sees them as being a lot closer than the gap was between Locke and Jones? And I think the answer is yes. There is less of a gap between the two of those two. Now, personally, I would have gone back for Tommy, since I want to see if he's going to be the backup or the bridge next year. But, they've gone for Locke because Tommy's still limited in practice with that forearm injury. If they're both healthy, what are you doing? Are you starting Locke or are you starting DeVito?
I mean, it's not pretty watching either way you look at it. Whoever we go with, it's kind of like choosing like how you would want to die. You'd want it to be as quick and pain free as possible, and that's what we want from the quarterback performance. Is we want it to be quick and we want it to be pain free, or we want it to be good and painful. I don't know, but I think if we wanted any chance of winning, I think probably go with Tommy DeVito. I think Locke, he showed some signs that of what we've seen of him in the past. He's not scared of throwing the ball deep, and he seems to be maybe a better in-game manager, if that makes sense. But I think DeVito, there's more positives to having DeVito under center than there is Drew Lock. I think Tommy's better with his legs. I mean, don't get me wrong, Drew Lock, the run he made to the pylon was pretty damn good. But I just think DeVito like Dave said about bringing that spark to the offense, and I think he did maybe bring more of a spark than Drew Lock did. But I don't know who is the better quarterback out of those two. It's like I said, it's like saying, would you rather die being burnt alive or would you rather die drowning? Which one are you going to choose? And it's like it's so difficult to choose between the two. But why don't we go? Let's do a quarterback goodbye committee sort of thing. Let's call up some plays for Locke. Let's call up some plays for DeVito, and then just let's see what plays are called. Depending on how we are in the game, what plays are being called in the game. Locke's off, DeVito's in. Why not? And what's the worst that can happen if that happens? I know it's not going to happen, but what's the worst that could happen? But yeah, I think going with Tommy is the right choice. Unfortunately, obviously, because of his injury, he won't be playing this week. But I hope once he does recover from that injury, then he does start again, and we see the Tommy DeVito of last year, and he maybe gets us this might be a bit controversial with some, but he maybe gets us a win or two, or very close to a win or two anyway.
I think Mayo makes a good point there that the game script was a huge difference.
Massively,
the game was over after as in the terms of as soon as halftime hit, that was it. Game done. It wasn't over versus the Cowboys, so it was a lot more competitive.
Agreed
at the time. So yeah, the game script was worse for DeVito. In the same breath, though, you could maybe say that in the second half, that DeVito got softer coverages than maybe Locke got, because he did pick up a lot of his yards in that second half. So it swings and roundabouts. You play the game that's in front of you at the end of the day. I just want to bring up another thing.
And I think Dallas just did enough to win, didn't they? And I think we just did too many things to not win.
Yeah. I mean, there were plenty of players who. I think if there's one thing that you can say, it's that there wasn't that kind of quit that we saw the week before. I do feel like there was a lot more tenacity. I think there are certain players, you will probably cover it in defense, who are not good enough to play anymore, and we need to look at playing depth people to find out if they're good enough now, because they can't be any bloody worse than some of the starters that are out there. But one thing that Mayo said that I thought was interesting was, imagine losing with your quarterback throwing for 497 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's the perfect way to lose, and that is the perfect way to lose.
I mean, I wouldn't complain if we lost a game if our quarterback threw for nearly 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. The fact that he threw 3 interceptions and 2 of them returned for touchdowns, yeah, okay, fair enough. But at least he's thrown it up there.
I mean, Drew Lock threw a pick 6 to Overshane, didn't he?
I mean,
so
he did.
He's half the way there.
I mean, it was on a screen, and how he didn't see Damari and Overshane, I don't know. But I mean, it's a great play by him because he tipped the ball and then caught it himself. So it was a great play by him. But yeah, you can't. Do we bring in James Winston? That's a conversation for another day. It's a conversation for another day.
Conversations that will have to be had in the off season. The great thing about the off season is that free agency is before the draft. So we have to cover all aspects because we don't know what's going to happen until they sign players. So we will have to talk about free agent quarterbacks. We'll talk about, as we do every season, we will talk about every single position, even if we don't need it. But we'll still talk about it because it could happen. It could happen.
Exactly. And let's just hope it's better than our last 2 or 3 free agent pickups at quarterback. I mean, Tyrod was okay, but Mike Glennon and Drew Lock, Jesus Christ. Jesus.
Yes. Yes. Is there anything? No. Right. So there's Kev's roundup, and then Greg's roundup at the end, because I had an extra point on top of what Kev had said. So
nice.
It sounds like Woody's roundup, doesn't it? It's like Toy Story. So Kev started off by talking about Tyrone Tracy. Tracy didn't start the game due to his 2 fumbles in the last 2 games, but did out carry Singletary. Unfortunately, we just, stop me if I sound like a broken record, but unfortunately, we failed to get a running game going yet again.
You're lying.
I know, right? With Tracy only having 9 carries to Singletary 7. Tracy's stat line was 9 carries, 32 yards, 24 yards after contact, 1 touchdown, as well as 2 catches for 33 yards. Quite clearly the lead back. Yes, he does have those 2 fumbles in 2 weeks, but as rightly, I think someone said last week, Tiki was a bit of a fumbling machine in his rookie year. Look what
he was. Exactly.
Now Dan's already covered him because we've lost him.
Just on Tyrone Tracy though, just quickly. So we came up against the worst run defense in the league, worse than the Giants are. The worst run defense in the league, and I think they're allowing 160 plus rush yards a game before coming into the game. Take away the yards that Drew Lock got on the ground. You've got 59 total rushing yards from Tracy, Singletary, and Malik Neighbors with he had 1 end around 4 yards. 59 total rushing yards outside of Drew Lock against the worst rushing defense in this league. Why do we not just hand the ball off time after time after time?
The funny thing is you've got what, 5? He had, I've just scrolled past me notes. 32 on 9. I haven't got quick maths, but that's what, 3.5-ish?
3.5, yeah.
Yeah, about 3.5. So 3.5 plus 3.5 plus 3.5 is first down.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I mean, as Mayo says, he did spend a lot of snaps blocking due to the double mug look. But
just run the ball. When you're this bad, just run the ball.
Yeah. Theo Johnson on IR. annoyingly, because he has over the last few weeks he's really sort of started to come on in the passing game and not just been that blocker, and he's being targeted by our quarterbacks. I'll say he was being targeted by our quarterbacks, not in the first half apparently. He hasn't been used in the first half, or wasn't used in the first half of the Cowboys game. Did have 5 catches on 5 targets, 54 yards, forced 3 missed tackles. Promising signs. One to have a look at. One to have a look at next season for sure. Definitely a project, but I would say a project that's trending in the right direction. Offensive line. So we spoke earlier about the pressure that Locke was under, 6 sacks, 7 quarterback hits. But the issue we also have is that the offensive line was average to good when it was healthy, and it's a mess. It's an absolute mess now.
Yeah.
Thomas is done for the season. Illuminor has missed last week's game with a quad injury that he suffered in the previous week's game, which I think saw him take only like 2-3 snaps. It's looking unlikely that he'll be ready to go this weekend. So the replacements are Chris Hubbard and Evan Neal. Now, together they were responsible for 1 of the 6 sacks and 6 of the quarterback hits. That's 6 of the 7 quarterback hits were on the tackles. The only other player with multiple sacks or hits allowed, unfortunately, was JMS, who had a shocker again, allowing 3 sacks from the interior. Now, I know that JMS is getting a lot of stick. I think there was something that Mayo said earlier where he said, he's getting credited with a lot of sacks, and it's the guards' fault they're not reading the front and missing their assignment. And I do think that the offensive line is just completely out of whack at the moment, and they're
Massively.
all missing assignments. I mean, you can also say that the guards are missing assignments, but when Evan Neal is being beaten by some of the pass rush moves that he's being beaten by, which essentially is somebody just walking past him, and then he doesn't know where he's at, he looks lost. The guard has to pick up for that as well. So I don't think you can solely aim it at them. I think the whole entire offensive line is just completely out of sync. Kevin, the PRF, has said that Evan Neal leads the league in quarterback pressures among offensive linemen.
He does.
He's played 3 weeks. He's played 3 weeks. How? Do you remember how nice it was watching Evan Neal in Munich and going, he looks good here? Doesn't that just speak testament to how shite the Commanders' front is? The Panthers' front is. That Evan Neal was able to look good. If I was the Panthers' edge rushers, I'd be like, wow, we were shit that week. We were awful.
Yeah, I think during the off season, it's time to reevaluate Evan Neal. And as Mayonnaise says, a paper bag will put up more resistance than Evan Neal. There was one play where he pretty much rushed the quarterback himself, didn't he? But I think he's not a tackle in this league. I'm sorry. He is not a tackle in this league. He's not good enough.
No, I was watching Giant Insider earlier, and Jerry was pretty much adamant that he wouldn't start him for the rest of the season. And he might get that. He might get that wish granted because he's on the injury report at the moment.
I mean, what other options have we got?
Josh Azudu.
Go on.
Can
it get any worse?
Probably not, to be honest. That's the scary thing. So Kev's last point was that on third down, the Giants were 3 of 12, 25% success rate. The Cowboys were 7 of 15, 47% success rate. For the season, the Giants have a 37% success rate on third down, which is the 12th worst. So actually not awful.
No, not horrendous. Not horrendous.
But obviously not good.
Yeah. Dallas were 0 for 1 on fourth downs, and we did convert our only fourth down attempt. So we've got that up on them at least.
Yeah. One last thing from Mayo. I mean, obviously I interviewed Mayo in the pre-season interview series, and he plays as a lineman. So as he's saying from experience, when you can't trust the guy next to you, Yeah, when you can't trust the guy next to you to do their assignment, you play with hesitancy, and that kills you as a lineman. And I can
massively, because you're in two
totally
minds.
agree. Yeah, yeah, exactly. You're like, okay, well, I've got my assignment, but if he screws up, I'm going to have to mop up somehow for him. So what am I
Yep.
doing with this guy? And yeah, it just goes to pot. So it just proves, just proves our point. Now, the point that I wanted to make that Kev kind of, I don't know if he missed here or was kind of looking just at the game, but massive talking point after the game was Malik, who was quoted saying, "I don't care about the drops. I don't care if I drop the ball 6 times. Keep throwing me the ball." Now, obviously, he has said since then. I think it was today. He was asked about that, and he was saying like, I'm not saying that the drops are bad. I'm just saying that I work on a mentality of on to the next one. So just keep feeding me because yes, we're going to see drops, but you're also going to see the good side of that. Now, I looked at PFF and I don't know if it's been updated since, because somebody was saying that Amari Cooper was top with 11 drops. I did not see him top with 11 drops. I saw CD Lamb top with 9 drops. Neighbours has only been credited with 7. So maybe that, I don't know. He's only been credited with 7. I'm
Was
not too
that
sure
was that
how.
in this game?
No. That is
Because
season.
I'm sure it seemed like CD Lamb dropped the ball 9 times in this game.
Yeah. Exactly. So I'm not sure what's happening there, but the one thing with CD Lamb and Malik Neighbours are they're both in the top 3 for targets. So you're getting more volume thrown at you. You're going to have more drops. That's just how it's going to happen sometimes. The more targets you'd be more worried if your drop rate was like 30-40%, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's nowhere near that. But is what he's saying right in the terms of, don't worry about the drops, keep throwing it to me? Or is this just a bigger issue because of the ineffectiveness of our offense that we just can't afford for him to be so blasé with stuff like this?
I think he's a 6th overall pick for a reason. I think
Mm,
he's got every right to be demanding the balls thrown his way.
mm,
Having 75 targets through 12 games is a lot.
mm,
But there's been some that you'd expect him to catch. I think we said it in a few games when we were watching the game. He needs to make that catch. He needs to make that catch. There's been some that have been sort of 50-50 sort of contested balls, and he's not come up with a catch, whatever. But
yeah,
there are some where you expect him to make that catch, and he's supposed to be this elite receiver that starting off the season we saw it. We saw that elite receiver in Malik Neighbours, and we were thinking. I think after sort of week 3, week 4, like he was in contention for offensive rookie of the year. He was leading the league in targets. He was almost leading the league in reception yards as well. But since he's had that injury and come back, he's not got he's not caught a touchdown. And I think what's quite concerning for me with Neighbours is that he doesn't seem to get off of coverage quickly enough, especially in the red zone as well. An elite receiver in the red zone makes plays. They'll get make themselves open in the end zone, or they'll make a great play on a corner. But like I said, outside of the first 3 weeks, we haven't really seen those fireworks from him. Is that because of the quarterback situation and how ineffective this offense has been? Probably is, because this offense has been pretty awful all season. But I think he's our best receiver, so you've got to keep throwing the ball his way and expect him to make that play. So I don't think we can afford him to necessarily be blasé about it. But I think what he said is, I don't blame him for saying it, because keep throwing the ball his way. Whether if he's targeted 20 times in a game and makes 12 catches, that's 12 catches he's made in a game. Granted, he hasn't made 8 of them, but you kind of expect the ball to be thrown his way more often than not. Just like you saw on Sunday in the Tampa game, the ball when they really need to make plays and drive down the field to get the winning field goal in overtime, who do they go to? Mike Evans and Sterling Shepard, because they're trusted receivers and they can catch the ball. You go into your number one receiver all the time, and every other team's the same as well. CD Lamb. How many times did the Cowboys go to him during the game? A lot, until he decided to I think do you get benched? Do you have an injury? I don't know, but yeah, I think. Yeah, I think what he's saying is right, but at the same time, I think there's a lot more to what's going on with Neighbours apart from just him.
I mean, as Darren said, a bit temperamental, potentially. And Mayo says, Neighbours maybe not 100%, and maybe not. Maybe he's out there trying to prove it and kind of shrugging it off. The thing is, though, is if you have a look around the league, there are a lot of big wide receivers who are having tougher years. I mean, Justin Jefferson doesn't have a touchdown since week 7 against the Lions.
Yep.
And you're talking about arguably the best wide receiver in the league, who's not named maybe Jamar Chase, who's having an outstanding season. But there are a lot of wide receiver ones who are being marked out of the game this year, and whether that comes down to poor quarterback play or different schematics or being schemed out of the game or whatever it is, there are a lot of players who maybe aren't living up to potential. I mean, we're going off in a little bit of a tangent here, but I don't know about anybody else, but this is probably the most difficult fantasy football year I've had in
impossible.
forever.
Yeah,
it's just yeah. And as
I mean,
said, the league is playing a cover 3 at a higher rate than previous years, and it is stifling a lot of teams.
Yeah, and I mean the crazy thing is as well. You look at the top 10 receivers in the league in terms of receiving yards. You got Chase up there, you got Jefferson up there, Terry McLaurin's in 3rd. Brock Bowers is the 4th leading receiver in the league in terms of yardage, with 884 yards through 12 games.
Been impressive, really, really good.
And it's like,
we could have taken Brock Bowers. Remember,
we could have done. We could have done.
Remember.
Yep. But you look down the list, and it's Jerry Jeudy at 6. I mean, granted, he just come off a massive game on Monday night, but Jerry Jeudy at 6. We could have had Jerry Jeudy in free agency as well.
But he's playing with Winston, and Winston's hitting yards.
Exactly that. And it's the fact there's only we're through 12 weeks and we only have 2 receivers in this league over 1,000 receiving yards so far. Says it all. It's a difficult year for receivers, and like Mayonnaise said, playing cover 3 at a higher rate than previous years probably doesn't help. So,
no.
Yeah, right. I think with Neighbours, I think we just need to see a little bit more from him, a little bit more.
Right, that's it. Offense done. I've had enough.
Offense done. So that means it's time for me to talk about defense. Then, yeah.
Yep.
Aren't I lucky?
Amazing. Aren't we all just so lucky to talk about this team?
We are. Amazing, isn't it? God, where do I start with defense? Fucking hell. I'm sure everyone's heard the saying, if you don't have anything nice to say, then don't say it at all. Because that's how I feel about the defense this week. I don't have anything nice to say. Because we just came up against this Dallas Cowboys team who have been absolutely goddamn awful at home all season. The Giants walk into the building and be like, there we go, you can win the game, it's fine. We don't need to beat you. We haven't beaten you for so many years, but we'll let you win this one. Fuck off, man. Just I don't know what's happened with this defense, whether it's a reaction to obviously the whole Jones thing, whether it's just to the point where the players just don't like the scheme. I just don't know, because the defense has just been bollocks the last few weeks, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better. In fact, we just get worse and worse week in, week out. Like I said, the Cowboys hadn't won a game at home all season. And of course, the Giants walk in the building and we are the get right game for them, because let's face it, they're a laughing stock at the moment. We're bottom of the NFC East for a reason. We've got a 3rd overall pick currently as it stands at the moment. Spoiler alert for Tankathon. We are the worst team in the NFC.
We're the worst team in the league.
Yeah.
A lot of power rankings have us as the worst team in the league.
Yep, and I fully agree. I think the defense isn't helping matters at all. You know, we know the offensive issues we had during the season. We know obviously Daniel Jones wasn't it. We've had problems on the Andrew Thomas getting injured early on during the season. Malik Neighbors getting injured, Devin Singletary, and then obviously Tyron Tracy coming in. We've had some problems on offense, but now it just seems that the defense just don't turn up any week, and it's just embarrassing. Not once during the game did I have any confidence that the defense could actually stop this awful Dallas offense. And for the 12th game in a row, we finished with a negative turnover differential, which is our longest single season streak in franchise history. And we've extended it. It's now 12 weeks so that we've had negative turnover differential. We haven't won the turnover battle in a single game this season. When they say defense wins you championships because you create turnovers and you make plays. This defense isn't even making a play, let alone creating a turnover. Because there was again not a single sack, one sack through 4 weeks now. Yet earlier in the season we were leading the league. It's almost like we got to the point where we were leading the league in sacks and have gone, that'll do for the year. We've done our job. See you later. Oh, no, wait, there's still 8 games to go. You still need to turn up every week and play. And, not only the fact that we extended our single season streak in not winning the turnover battle, we set a league record, NFL record, most consecutive games in a season without an interception. It's now standing at 11. And I have full faith that this defense will extend that next week as well. So we'll be on to 12 games and then probably on to 13. And you know what? We probably won't have an interception for the rest of the season. Maybe we might get one in the Eagles game at the end of the year because they've already clinched a playoff spot and they put out their fucking backups. Even then, we probably don't get a pick. And finally, if that's not bad enough, to top it off, we allowed fifth-year running back Rico Dowdle to have his first career 100 rushing yard game. How does that make sense? How does that make sense? We allowed the league's worst rushing attack to run for 122 yards total on the ground. Rico Dowdle had over 100 of them. Rico Dowdle is Rico Dowdle. He's probably like, who here has Rico Dowdle in their fantasy team? Probably no one because he's awful. But yet we allow him to rush for over 100 yards in a game. Well done, defense.
There was only one player on the Cowboys who had a rush of over 20 yards for the season before Thanksgiving, and it was Dak Prescott.
Yep.
And now it's gone.
Yep. Mayonnaise, you lucky man. And you, Steve, lucky man, because he got you some points last week.
Who thoroughly recommend him on the bench. Who benched him?
I'd thoroughly recommend benching him next week because he's awful. But yeah, just how we've talked about the run defense enough as it is. I'm not going to go into it anymore because we all know it's shit. But for the rest of the season, we now have to do everything on defense without. Yeah, if he was on a winning team, not a question he'd be in the running for defensive player of the year. But we've now got to go the rest of the season, the next 5 games, without Dexter Lawrence. And if we can't stop the run with him, then God, we've got no chance of stopping the run without him. And who's coming up on Sunday, you may ask? That's right, Alvin Kamara and the New Orleans Saints. So, what are we saying, 200-yard game for Alvin Kamara?
Who's the week after that?
Oh, yeah. Now you mention it. Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. And the week after that?
Bijan Robinson.
Bijan Robinson.
Taylor.
And then Jonathan Taylor. And then
Saquon. who actually just very quickly while you're talking about that, Dan, you were saying, oh, they might be resting their starters come week 18. They're pushing the Lions for that bye week on the playoffs, so they could come in and just decimate.
So I was listening, like you, I listened to the Giant Insider earlier, and they were chatting about Barkley and about breaking Eric Dickerson's record in week 18 against the Giants. Just don't. Knife through the heart. Literally, that says everything about this season you need to know. If that happens, that says everything. Everything. I mean, there were a couple of players who weren't horrendous. Don't get me wrong, they weren't great, but they weren't horrendous. I thought Brian Burns did okay up front. Nowhere near the $28 million a year, and nowhere near what you expect from a $28 million a year player. But he did okay. And I thought Tyler Nubin had a good game overall. I thought his coverage was pretty good. And finally, I think the last few weeks, I think Cordell Flott started to show some glimpses of why we selected him in the third round 2 years ago. And I thought the game against Dallas was one of his better games. So not all doom and gloom. There were a couple of players that were okay at best, but apart from that, where do we go from here?
It would be nice if Flock could get his head around. Sometimes I do feel like he just like sticks his arm in and just kind of hopes that it's on target. And it's better than nothing. It's better than Adoree Jackson, who had an absolute shocker. For some reason, the commentators thought Adoree Jackson had turned into bloody Revis Island during the broadcast and were praising him, and I just couldn't get my head around it because he was awful. He got beat.
Can we not just cut him there?
Okay, so this is my point. Yeah, Trey Hawkins had a rough rookie season.
Yep,
he did. But I'd much rather watch Trey Hawkins out there than Adoree Jackson. Because if Adoree, as Chris Bizzignano rightly said, if Adoree Jackson was good, it wouldn't have taken so long for a team to sign him.
And the fact that we did sign him
due to necessity,
desperation more than anything, because we needed a cornerback, and we went. Who knows the Giants? No, not even who knows the system. It's just like who is familiar to us. Oh, let's go back to Adoree. I'd rather they didn't, but we did, and we're 12 weeks in, and I wish he wasn't on the team. As I'm sure plenty of fans out there wish he wasn't on the team. But I think overall, one of the biggest issues in the game was tackling. According to PFF, we missed 14 total tackles in the game. 14 missed tackles in the game. What are the coaches coaching them on? Where is the? I don't ever remember watching a Giants defense and them not knowing how to tackle, or not just that, but just the angles are awful. And when we're trying to stop the run, and you're just throwing an arm at the guy, and he just runs, brushes you off, get out. Missed tackles have had a huge impact on the fact that our run defense is awful this year. But to have 14 missed tackles in a game against this Dallas team that were god awful on the ground, I just don't get it. I just don't get what are the coaches doing week in, week out. How are they not just going back to basics and going, right, coaching, defense 101, tackles. This is how to tackle. This is how to make a tackle. Why are they not doing that? Because we've seen it week in, week out, missed tackles. And it's pathetic. It's pathetic how bad it is. Why do you think missed tackles have been such a big issue for us this year, Craig? And if you were Dabes, would you be tearing defensive coordinator Shane Bowen a new arsehole to try and get it sorted? or are you just at the point where he's thinking, "There's nothing I can do"?
I mean, yeah, it's not exactly a new thing, is it? He could shout and scream at Bowen all he wants, but it happened last year, it happened the year before. It's just something we're not very good at for some reason, is tackling. I mean, I don't think we're the league's worst.
No,
We're close, but I don't think we're the league's worst. And I think that's part of the bigger issue, maybe, is the fact that it's something that is happening around the league. It's just very evident when you're a bad team and you're missing tackles. That it's a very easy thing to pick up on when your defense can't get a stop. If you're a team who are making a lot of missed tackles, but every so often you're getting a stop, and your offense is cooking enough that it's not exactly losing you football matches, then I don't think it's as big as a problem. But it is obviously a bigger spotlight for us because of the fact we are so poor at the moment. But like I said, it's not just a Bowen issue. It's been there for a while. I mean, it'll be interesting to kind of see who leads the team in missed tackles. Is it the cornerbacks? Is it safeties? Is it our linebackers? Is it our defensive tackles? Because defensive tackles shouldn't be missing tackles, but in the backfield they might well be. And does that then go down to the positional coaches? Does that go down to if it's in the backfield? Is it down to Jerome Henderson? Is that an issue that you need to take up with him and the angles that his players are taking? Going to go back to my friend Adoree Jackson. Like, he was culpable for a few of them, I thought. Yep. And the thing is a lot of the missed tackles, it's not a case of like they're completely whiffing on them. They're just not strong enough.
They're just not wrapping them up.
No, Adoree like hit someone like it was a Madden hit stick, and that doesn't work in real life. Like, you have to wrap them up. You have to take them down. You're only going to be able to, frock over somebody if you're an edge or a defensive tackle. Adoree's not exactly the most built of players. I'm not saying he's slight. I'm not saying he's like flop, but like, he's not the most built of players. I don't think you're going to be able to just lower your shoulder and that's going to automatically bring your opponent to the floor. Like, you need to finish the tackles. I do think part of it is it's just caring now as well. Like, a lot of these players look like they don't care sometimes. A lot of players apparently don't like the scheme. That is a Bowen issue, but that's not a Bowen issue that he can coach out of them unless he changes his scheme. But that's his blueprint. So, and there are plenty of other coaches using similar blueprints in the league to greater effect. It's just, I don't know. Maybe the soft coverage doesn't help because you're too far off of them, and then you're having to engage. And by the point you're having to engage, you're almost one-on-one with the player, and they're able to slip past you. Maybe that's not helping. But it's definitely something that needs to be addressed for sure in the off season, because what good is it going to do addressing it now? You're already too far gone.
Yeah, very true. I think it's got to the point now where it's almost like you have to go back to basics. Like I said, defense 101. Let's go back to absolute basics and see who can do the basics right and see who you can't do it right. And those that can't do it right, let's coach you a little bit. And if you, after coaching, you're still not getting it, then why are you on the team? If you can't get it right, why are you on the team? But, we're talking about running backs are coming up against in the next 5 weeks. Look, the quarterbacks are coming up against in the next 5 weeks. It's just as scary for us. Derek Carr, I said Lamar Jackson, Kirk Cousins, maybe, I don't know, or it could be.
I get a feeling it'll be Penix by then.
I think it will be Michael Penix by then. At the moment, nobody knows what Michael Penix is capable of, but it wouldn't surprise me if he has a game. You then got the Colts with either Joe Flacco or Anthony Richardson, whoever's going to be starting for them.
It'll be Richardson.
And then and then Jalen Hurts to finish the season potentially. So there's 5 quarterbacks there and 5 running backs there that can do a hell of a lot of damage against this defense, and I expect every single one of them to.
Bear in mind as well, out of the players that you just mentioned there, Derek Carr, not a runner. Lamar Jackson, runner. Kirk Cousins, not a runner. Anthony Richardson, a strong runner, like he is a very, very built. And then Jalen Hurts, who is a runner. So you talk about our poor run defense. Well, 3 of the next 5 games are going up against teams where their quarterback has the tendency to run when he wants to do it, especially in the red zone with Anthony Richardson and Jalen Hurts.
Exactly. So we're in for a fun 5 weeks, Giants fans, and we'll bring you every single game right here on this podcast. All right then, let's round out the game with looking at special teams. Is your boy trying to imitate Saquon Barkley?
Right, we'll get to him. We'll get to him. Gano kicked 2 extra points, 2 field goals during the game. But last week, as I mentioned in the preview, one of the things that would have really hurt us would have been Turpin in the return game, and Gano just nullified that by absolutely smashing every single one of his kickoffs through the back of the end zone. So, well done on scheming that up and actually nailing that as well. Gillen also made sure that Turpin didn't get any decent returns due to the hang time that he was able to do. He had the hang time and the punts, allowing his gunners to get down the field. Turpin finished the day with 2 returns for -3 yards and 2 fair catches. And I will hold my hands up and admit when I'm wrong. Smith Marset is winning me over. He hasn't got a touchdown, so there's no jersey. But his punt return in the second quarter was 22 yards. But the stat sheet doesn't show the hurdle, and the hurdle, it's only a couple of more yards. The hurdle's good. Like, let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's not Saquon Barkley. It's a standard hurdle. We've seen Theo Johnson do it as well. But since my frustrations with him allowing the ball to bounce in Munich, I think after the bye week, he's probably been the standout on special teams, along with Art Green, who's been really good as a gunner. And I hope it continues. What's the point in activating Gunner now off IR? You might as well leave him on there for the rest of the season. Yeah. So he's going to be there for the next 5 weeks. We might as well see what we've got there. And he has improved, So like I said, I'll hold my hands up and say when a player is playing well, and I will, bemoan them when they're not playing well. But Smith Marset has definitely turned things around.
And the beautiful thing is, we've actually seen a player improve over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And fair play to Gabriel for sticking with him.
Yeah, man. I think obviously special teams it's been very up and down the season with injuries, but I think Gano looked solid against Dallas. But do you see Gano on the team next year?
No. I mean, I'm going off the top of my head. I can't remember. Is he out of contract at the end of this year? Or has he got 1 more year? And how much would it take to cost to cut him? I'd have to have a look into that. But no, I'd be happy to bring back Gillen. I actually think that Gillen's improved year on year since we've had him, and is a solid enough punter that he's serviceable. He's not going to set the world alight. He's not going to get Pro Bowl this year, but at the end of the day, I think he has been very, very good. But yeah, Gano, I don't know. I think if you could get out of his contract, maybe it's worth having a look. But it also depends on who's out there. Kickers are not having a good season. We're looking at the kicking goat really struggling this year in Tucker. Even Brandon Aubrey's missed a few, and every single time that they seem to say that, oh, this person's now the most accurate kicker, they miss one. So it's a tough league out there. Gano could be a case that the Ganos just sticks around because contractually contractually, it makes sense. But yeah, I'm not sure how much he's making next year.
Feel free, viewers, if you want to look up Graham Gano's contract situation for us, let us know in the comments. All right, then we'll move on. It's our weekly Tankathon update. It's what you've all been waiting for, viewers. You want to find out what's been going on in terms of Tankathon. Do we have the graphic, Craig?
Do, because we also have this.
Go on.
Boom boom. Do 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 do. Boom boom. Do 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 do. Boom boom. Do 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 do.
It's Tankathon time, courtesy of Shane's infamous DJ friend. Thanks for that. So we all know we're currently standing at number 3 in terms of draft pick for the 2025 NFL draft, which is in 141 days, as it says on the screen. We currently have the number 3 overall pick. We've moved down a bit. Yeah, we've moved down one space as the Las Vegas Raiders are now taking the 2nd overall pick, losing. So they've lost 8 games in a row. The Jags are still in number 1. And with that disgraceful hit on Trevor Lawrence, it's unlikely that he'll play this weekend, so don't expect them to move anywhere off there. In at number 4, still at number 4, should I say, the New England Patriots. Number 5 still are the Carolina Panthers. The Jets just seem to be doing the Jets things and losing games week in, week out, even with Aaron Rodgers. The Titans have actually moved up or down, whichever way you look at it, moved down to 7. Even though they lost. Cleveland's still at number 8, the Bengals at 9, and the Saints are at 10. So the top 10 hasn't changed. There's been a few movers and shakers around. Like I said, we've dropped down to number 3. But yeah, the top 10 is still as it was last week.
You do,
number 3 overall.
I do wonder with the Jags whether they shut down Trevor Lawrence for the rest of the season, with this being his 2nd concussion of the season. It would be very easy to do for them. It's not like they're going to make the playoffs. Could be very much a case of Mac Jones for the rest of the season, I would imagine.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either if they do that, to be fair. Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, number 3 going into week 13. Week 13? No, week 14, isn't it? Sorry.
14.
Number 3 overall pick going into week 14. 5 weeks to go. Can all change. We could win a game. I mean, I'm sure people won't want that to happen, but we could win a game. You never know.
Indeed.
College standouts then, Craig. Let's go for them.
Yep. So we've got Shane's 2 college standouts from this weekend. So on the left-hand side there, Mason Graham. They're both defensive tackles, these 2 guys. Graham had 1 hurry, 5 tackles, 5 defensive stops, posted grades of 90.9 run defense, 76.5 tackling, 67.5 pass rush for a total defensive grade of 88.4. Shane said, whilst this was no means Graham's best tape of the 2024 college season, he showed why he is undisputedly defensive tackle 1 in the upcoming draft class. Year on year, he has developed at Michigan, and this is his 3rd year with the Wolverines. He's seen his sacks, hits, hurries, and tackles improve year on year. And one of my favourite things with Graham is his run blocking, the way in which he keeps his blocker engaged while the play is developing. And then once he recognises what's happening, his ability to throw him off or disengage, and then show you that motor, get physical, meeting the runner, bringing them down. It's something you dream about seeing the next 97. Graham, for me, is a top 5 talent in this class. However, due to quarterbacks being taken high and the likes of Travis Hunter, he could fall out of the top 5 and be a steal for whoever lands him. I believe Graham has a lot of potential to develop. I could even see him having a sexy-dexy kind of start to his career where you might not see the best of him in the first 2 years, but come year 3 or 4, he will break out into a monster. Again, much like Dex has done for the last 3 years. So that was Shane's write-up on Mason Graham. He did also name Kenneth Grant as another one to look out for. So I had a look at his stats and kind of put together a little something here. So Grant against Ohio State had 5 hurries, 4 tackles, 3 defensive stops. He had grades of 79.9 in run defense, 74.1 tackling, 85.7 pass rush for total defensive grade, 89.9. Now, Grant has mostly been viewed as the Watson to Graham's Holmes, but against Ohio State, he was arguably the best defensive performer for the Wolverines. He had the most pressures by any interior player for the entire college week, with 5. And like I've said, he added 3 defensive stops to that. Grant's first round, Grant's viewed as a first round talent. He's 339 pounds, but is on the freak list and will likely impact a team straight away. His burst and long speed is incredible for his size. He's great at disrupting screens and outside runs. He can also affect the quarterback's passing lane by getting his hand in there. He really has kind of a bit of everything to him. So they're the 2 players, both Michigan Wolverines. Obviously, they had a really, really good showing against Ohio State this past weekend. Planting
it was a big win for them, wasn't it? I think it was 13-10.
Plant the flag as well, as that happened multiple times with Florida planting the flag at FSU, and plenty of other different flag planting episodes across the league. Obviously, we've got college championship weekend coming up this weekend, so watch the space tomorrow because we'll have a couple of people to look out for there.
We sure will. Kevin Shane will highlight a couple of players to look out for this weekend.
I mean, Mayo has said rightly there that they're Wink Martindale guys. He doesn't look like a head coaching candidate. Oh, wait. Can we also just bear in mind that Wink Martindale was absolutely buttered by the Michigan Wolverines fans about 2-3 weeks ago? So, you know, they are also easily the 2 standout players on Michigan, and Michigan are not a good side, definitely not as good as they were last year. And I don't really think that Martindale's really been that great at Michigan from the times that I've seen them. He's definitely not been lauded by the Michigan fans. So let's taper our expectations on Wink Martindale's leaving of the Giants being a mistake, because though Shea Bowen hasn't been good, let's not forget that Martindale was trying to take down the rest of the coaching staff from within.
Yeah, he didn't exactly leave on good terms, did he? Did Wink? So,
no.
And yeah, like you said, Michigan haven't been the team that they were last year, so maybe it's a good thing we didn't make him head coach.
Yeah.
Mayonnaise sent in the bit about Gano's contract, I believe.
Yeah, I think I was looking at it as well just before we got on there. So yeah, he's under contract until 2027. So 2026 season will be his last. There is a potential out according to Spot Track with a $2.5 million dead cap hit at the end of this year. So there is that opportunity there. His cap hit for next year is apparently 5.6 million and 5.75 million in 2026.
I'm sorry, but we need to spend money elsewhere. So
yeah, I mean that cap hit is higher than what we gave Drew Lock this year, and we've all said that that's a massive mistake. So the fact that he's also had injuries in back-to-back seasons now. I don't know.
If he wants to re-sign for $1 million, cool. But 5.5 is a lot of money to pay a kicker.
As Mario says, post June 1st, it does go lower. I have a big issue with these post June 1st kind of cuts because, I mean, for a kicker, it's not too bad. Like, so maybe you could do that, but like you look at post June 1st cuts for some of the bigger players. What's the point? Like, unless you are keeping them around as like a potential and then cutting them. Like, so for example, Daniel Jones. If Daniel Jones was still on the team, so many people are like, oh, let's just designate him as a post-June 1st cut. That's months after free agency. So what's the point? That money that you're getting back, you're not going to be able to spend on anyone good. You're spending it on the scraps of the league. Like, it makes no sense. But like, yeah, I get it. I get it with Gano. You're probably going to be able to pick up a kicker. But again, if you're going to wait that long, and you're like, oh, okay, it's 1.5 post June 1st. Well, you're freeing up 3.5 million. Could that 3.5 million be spent on better backups than you could get post June 1st? I mean, I don't know. I think if you're going to take the hit, is 1 million worth it? Are you really going to save that much? Because you're going to have to sign a kicker. It's a pretty important piece of your offense.
Yeah, exactly. Steve did ask a question. How did FSU go?
Yeah, I already told you. They lost to Florida, and Florida planted their flag in the middle of the FSU thing.
I don't think there's any surprise there.
Bad season, write it off.
That's it. Same for the Giants, isn't it? Bad season, write it off. Let's move on to next year. Cool. Alrighty. Unfortunately, that is all we have time for this evening. We'll be back tomorrow evening, 8:30 again, to preview our Week 13 game against the Saints in what will be our 200th episode of this fine podcast that we put out for you every single week. We'll be welcoming Dave from the Saints Report UK to give us his take on his team, on the Saints. So make sure you tune in tomorrow evening at 8:30. Craig, anything else to add before we go?
No, just apologies again that this is late. Unfortunately, like I said, some bits got in the way. But yeah, we're back again tomorrow night. We've got a guest on to talk Saints as a special treat for the 200th episode. Anna's going to make an appearance to give her prediction on the game at the weekend, which is
she's predicting a Giants win, isn't she?
Very much doubt it. I very much doubt it. But yeah, as Steve said, it doesn't seem that long ago since episode 100. And I was thinking about this, and it's true, but like, without ringing our own bell, putting this into PG terms, I genuinely feel like we've put out a lot of content since episode 100. Like, a lot of content. We're live twice a week if we can in season, once a week outside of season. There's always the odd extra episode that seems to come out in the off season when we get excited. For example, me and Kev doing the Rebuild the Giants. I might go back and watch that Rebuild the Giants and figure out of the players how much they went for and how well they're doing, and see if me and Kev
that'd be interesting.
Are good Twitter GMs. But yeah, it does feel like it's gone. The second 100 episodes have gone a lot quicker than the first 100. But yeah, we'll talk more about that tomorrow.
Yeah, I think when was the 100th episode? Let me have a look back. Yeah, off season.
The off season last year.
Yep. So just before 2023 season started. So just over a year, we put out almost 100 episodes. So it's not bad going, hey? It's not bad going. But yeah, number 200 is up tomorrow. And I'm looking forward to it, even though we're probably going to talk about the Giants loss again. But looking forward to it nonetheless. And yeah, it'd be good to hear what Dave's got to say about the Saints, and it'd be good to hear Anna's prediction as well, because she's going to be happy. She's probably going to be quite happy. There you go. Steve said 7th of July 2023 was episode 100. So a year and 5 months almost to the day. There we go. That's nice. But yeah, looking forward to tomorrow. Should be a good one. And yeah, we'll see you then. Check out all the socials for the latest news and updates. Follow the links in the description to find where we are. Give the episode a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to get notified on when we go live. To everyone watching and listening, we appreciate you getting involved in the comments. And as always, for getting involved. So thank you very much. And my thanks as ever go to Craig for joining me. We are signing off until tomorrow evening. Let's go Giants.